Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jai Picks, the other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some Dana White Contender Series episode 6. Let's get it. Coming off a big upset last week at Dana White Contender Series, the Bruno Lopez losing as a near minus 1,000 favorite in the main event. Brendison Ribeiro knocking him out in the first round. Quite the fight. That is Dana White Contender Series in a nutshell this year. I mean, the dogs have been barking, and we'll see if they can do that again this week. Overall, we got 5 fights on the card, headlined by a Peruvian and an American, one man that has been to the Contender Series before, and we will talk about him. But if you want to get the bets for Dana White Contender Series, stay tuned at the Double Egg on Instagram, and you can get those for free automatic download on usually posted Tuesday morning or Monday night, depending on when we get them in. But just stay tuned at the Double Egg on Instagram. They'll be available there. That is also accessed through the link in the description. And you can jump on the premium membership if you want the UFC bets, because we've been doing pretty well with those. But what do you think of the card overall? What do you think of the Contender Series overall? Because last week, I believe, contracts were getting flown out pretty easily. But the week before that, 2 of them didn't. So it looks like Dana White's back to his ways, giving out the contracts left and right. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought after 2 weeks ago, I thought we were going to get back to the old ways of you need a spectacular finish or you need to look damn good to get the contract. But again, last week he's handing them out again. This week, I think we could see some of the same because a lot of these guys, this is their second or even third, I believe, stint on the Contender Series. So if they get a win, they're probably in, or they wouldn't have brought them back on the show, in my opinion. So, but yeah, some experience on this card. Some decent fights and some other ones that might be a little sloppier in my opinion. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, as always, I mean, you don't want to go too hard on these Dana White Contender Series fights because it's a lot of variance and it's like your one shot. So a lot of these guys will fold. Some of these guys rise to the occasion, and that's usually stuff you just can't see coming. So we'll start it off. We're going to go through all these fights and break them down and give our prediction. But once again, they're not the bets, just what we're leaning towards right now. Let's start it off with the main event. A lightweight bout here. Malik Lewis coming in at plus 150 against James Lontop, coming out of Peru. 24 years of age for him. Malik Lewis, 27 years of age and 6-1. He has been on the Contender Series before against none other than the Trevor Peek and nearly had him out in the first round. If you go back and watch that fight, Malik Lewis had a great first round against Trevor Peek. Trevor Peek, I mean, if it's not Trevor Peek, he probably gets a first-round finish. Trevor Peek is damn durable. Comes back in round 2. Malik Lewis is gassed out. Since then, he went out and got a win by a third-round TKO in Peek fighting back in February, and then he gets the fight here against James Lontop. See, 13-2 for Lontop. Good amount of experience as far as the MMA professional scene goes. And his only losses come by a submission and one by decision. He's been doing pretty dang good on the regional scene, knocking dudes out, getting some decision wins. And overall, I mean, we've seen Peruvians do pretty dang good on the Contender Series this year. So it's tough to go against him. He's coming in as the favorite, though. The ones that have been coming through are the dogs. So maybe he's getting a little overpriced here. But either way, this should be a good scrap. I mean, for 155, these guys hit pretty hard, and they're going to go out there and throw. Who do you like it in this one?
Yeah, like you said, man, for 155, this is like the prime style for both guys that makes a fun fight. And, Lontop has 11 fights in the last 2.5 to 3 years. Like, this dude is active. He's always wanting to fight. And, just knowing how active he is and that he loves doing this, he kind of shows that in the octagon because he'll throw hands. He'll brawl with guys. He might not be the most technical, but he is a dog, and you can see that. And he is powerful as well. So a lot of times if he stays in the pocket, he'll land a big shot and get fights to finish. But for Malik Lewis, like, even though he took the loss against Trevor Peek, I think he showed how dangerous and powerful he is as well. I think he probably learned a lot in that fight with Peek because after having him hurt, he just kind of emptied the tank and he was burning hot and then just had nothing left in round 2 once he knew Peak was going to survive everything he threw at him, and then he gets finished. So to bounce back in your next fight and win by 3rd round TKO, it's like, okay, it shows that maybe he can fight all 3 rounds. Maybe he learned something. Maybe taking that loss to a guy like Peak wasn't the worst thing in the world. I have problems with him getting into these brawls though with a guy like Lon Top. Like that just screams to me this fight could end either way. Like both of these guys, if you watch their tape, they both have power. I think Lon Top's opponents, like the level of competition isn't that bad when you look at this record. It just depends, like, I guess what that regional scene has to offer and who his opponents have been fighting. But to the naked eye, like he's not fighting bums by any means. So it is tough to pick. I think it might be dog or pass here, especially with how dangerous Lewis is. And if you're going to get him at plus money, that's probably what I'm going to be leaning at. Because like I said, he holds power as well. He's a good striker. Maybe the better, well-rounded fighter here. You just can't get clipped by Lon Top because he's got some power as well.
Yeah, Malik Lewis, pretty big lightweight. I mean, 6 foot. And you look at him against Trevor Peak, like he looks pretty big. And especially in his last fight, if you look at him against Paulo Silva, like he looks pretty dang big. He'll mix in the wrestling from here and there, but for the most part, he's going to want to stand and strike with you. But even James Lomtop, like he's been fighting at welterweight his last 3 or 4 fights. So I mean, we'll see how he looks at 155. Not like he hasn't fought at 155 before, but either way, it is a difference. So he's also a pretty big 155er. He's a young guy, and he's never been knocked out. So I look at this like if it's on the feet, Lomtop is he's going to throw a lot at you. I think he probably out volumes Malik Lewis and can be more active. So I'm going to go with Lomtop for the pick. Kind of tough to take a chalk in a fight like this, but either way, he'll be the pick. And it should be a good scrap. Malik Lewis, 2nd time here. He's got to get it done now. If he doesn't, odds are the UFC dream probably just got one step further away.
Yep.
Heavyweight bout here. Yonathan Denise coming in at minus 120 against Eduardo Nevis coming in at minus 110. Nevis 7-1 in his professional career, 5-0 for Denise. That one loss for Eduardo Nevis came on the Contender Series to Mick Parkin last year in August 23rd, and that was his only loss. He lost round 1 submission to Mick Parkin, who was the Englishman who trains with Tom Aspinall. Just made his debut at the London card. Most recently, Denise 5-0. And he's got a lot of kickboxing fights. If you look at his tapology, he's got a good amount of kickboxing fights. You watch the tape on him, you could definitely see that. Like he's got some pretty good skills on the feet. I'm for sure that's where he wants this fight to be. Some of those knockouts he's got on the regional scene in MMA are like pretty dang good. The one against Guillermo Lazzarini, he knocked him out by a left hook. That dude got hit and he went face down on the canvas. It was really fun to watch that one. For Neves, he'll mix in the takedowns. He tried to do that with Mick Parkham, took him down twice, and then ended up getting rear naked choke. So I don't know, when I watch him fight, it just looks like chaos to me. Like it doesn't really look like anything calculated. I think Neves is probably going to want to make this a dirty fight. And but if he just sits at range and kickboxes with Denise, I don't think it goes well for him. I like Denise in this one just for the fact that I think he's more skilled. What are you thinking?
Yeah, for Denise, sorry, he's got a lot of 1st round finishes, and normally I'd say that if he doesn't get it done in the 1st round, I get really worried because we've never seen him past that point. And for big guys like this, sometimes they gas. Like if they can't find that early finish, maybe they panic a little bit and just don't have the energy left in rounds 2 and 3. But if you look at Neves, like against Parkin, he kind of gassed pretty early himself. So, maybe if Denise can't get the 1st round finish, maybe he'll have more left in the tank than Neves, because I just wasn't impressed against Mick Parkins. For Denise, though, like he does have the glory kickboxing experience, and I watched some of his fights, and he does well in some, but others, man, when the guy's more athletic in front of him, he gets pieced up. Like I saw him get his legs kicked off in a few fights, and he got dropped repeatedly with leg kicks over and over. But so far, no troubles in MMA. 5-0, all knockouts. He's a big, strong guy. I do think the strength and being able to keep people off of him kind of gives an advantage at this level because his kickboxing experience is so good. And he's not like that traditional kickboxer where he's going to chew up your legs and stuff. He's like, he likes to throw with his hands more than I think his feet and the knees and stuff like that. Like he just kind of will bull rush guys at times and get you up against the cage and rip the body, come upstairs and just melt guys. So, yeah, as far as Neves goes, he's only 23, I believe. So maybe he is getting better. Maybe it was a good learning fight when he fought Mick Parkin. I just don't like what I saw in that fight when he fought a guy who is, a bigger, stronger guy who, has some decent striking. Like he just seemed like he gassed out once he realized that he couldn't kind of implement the game he wanted to. So in this fight, man, I think Denise, if he keeps it standing, which I think he can, I don't think Neves is like a outstanding wrestler by any means. I think at some point he's going to find a big shot or he's just going to be a little more technical and just better on the feet here. So I'm going to take Denise for the pick.
Yeah, it's greasy heavyweights. I mean, you're probably better off just going dog or pass, especially in like Dana White Contender Series. But I do think Denise has like a better ceiling for the UFC considering the kickboxing skills. I think he's just going to be a little bit faster, be able to move around on him a little bit more and get on. Like when he's hitting 3, Neves is probably hitting 1. Like every time Neves goes in for 1, Denise hits him with 2 or 3, maybe a kick and a couple punches. That's the way I see this one going. I'm going to take him for the pick. Featherweight bout here. AJ Cunningham coming at plus 200 against Stephen Gwen coming at minus 240. 8-1 for Stephen Gwen and 10-2 for AJ Cunningham. Stephen Gwen, this is gonna be his 3rd time in the Dana White Contender Series. So looks like he's going for the Jamie Pickett. I think Jamie Pickett had 3 times, and hopefully if he gets a win here, he can get in. But he's 1-1 in the Contender Series. He lost his first one to Alan Cruz, and that was a brutal 3rd-round flying knee knockout by Alan Cruz. Alan Cruz goes into the UFC, loses 2 in a row, gets cut. Stephen Gwen comes back, gets a win on in LFA, goes back in the Contender Series, and beats Theo Rayleon by decision, doesn't get a contract, hasn't fought since. It's been 2 years, just about 2 years since he's fought. And that was the last time the Contender Series. He's going to be fighting here for the 3rd time in the Contender Series, hoping to get a contract. AJ Cunningham, 10-2. He's been fighting in the LFA, fighting on Fury FC. His 2 losses are by decision. If you look on his Instagram, looks like he's been training with Bryce Mitchell. He's fighting out of Arkansas, so he's got that. This is an interesting one because you get like a guy that's like, I don't want to say up and coming, but he's the underdog coming against a guy who's here for the 3rd time. It's like, how good are you if you got to be here for the 3rd time? And you're minus 240. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of just thinking dog or pass on this one. I think watching the film on Stephen Gwen, he's got some decent skills. He's been off for 2 years. I don't know exactly what he's been doing in that 2 years, if he's gone and like really tried to up his game, or if he's just like, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. But hey, if I get another Dana White Contender Series fight, I'll do it. For AJ Cunningham, I mean, he's young enough in his career where it's like he could get this win, go into the UFC and like do something decent. But watching the film on him, like it's not like anything crazy. So this is I don't want to say the highest level Dana White Contender Series fight that I'm looking at here, but yeah, this is a weird one. What are you thinking?
Yeah, for Gwen, I think he's probably like the better, more technical striker. But like you said, it's his 3rd time on the show. And the one red flag I have is that I think his last appearance was 2021, and he hasn't fought since then. Yeah. Like, this is going to be his first fight in a couple of years. Pretty technical. When he gets into the flow state, he fights pretty well. He throws good combos, and he can land big shots. But I don't know. For AJ Cunningham, the big red flag from him is that he burns hot, and I think he slows down as fights goes on. But he fights way better when he does keep his composure, and when he fights more technical and more smart. But sometimes, when he goes out there and he's burning hot and he's looking to do something early, like I feel like his gas tank just kind of depletes as the fight goes on, and then he can't really implement the game plan he wants because he does have good wrestling and good grappling. And against the striker like Gwen, if he can do that early, figure out a way not to gas out, like I think he's gonna
Yeah.
be the stronger fighter and be the guy that can control a lot of the rounds and even look for submissions. And he's got good top pressure too and land some big ground and pound. But it's greasy to me because I don't know what to expect with Gwen. He loses on the Contender Series. He gets a fight, and then he comes back onto the show, gets a decision win, and now we've heard nothing and seen nothing of him for 2 years. So that kind of fight, you just don't know what you're getting. If AJ Cunningham though can't get the takedowns early, I think it's going to be mentally tough for him to stand in there with a striker and hope he finds a knockout or at some point he can land a takedown. And physically, I think too, if he can't land the early takedowns, I just don't think he's going to have the energy to keep up with Gwen on the feet. So it's a toss up for me. I am going to lean with AJ Cunningham. I think he has more to fight for here. He's got a pretty rough story of how he got here and his upbringing stuff. I think he's going to be the one that wants it more here. I think Gwen, I just don't like that he's been so inactive, man. You just never know. He could come in and look like a world beater and he's been training, or he could, not look good at all being on a 2-year layoff. So I'm going to take AJ Cunningham, but it's not a confident pick in the least.
Yeah, as far as betting goes, I'd say dog or pass. I think Gwen will probably be the more seasoned fighter, and if he just hasn't been sitting on his butt for the last 2 years, like I think he should probably go out there and win. But AJ Cunningham could come in here and look for some takedowns, look for some back control, look to slow the fight down. If it's like a striking battle, I think Gwen could stay safe enough and just piece him up on the feet. Not that AJ Cunningham is a bomb on the feet, but I just think he's going to be a little bit more seasoned, having that experience at the higher level. Even though Dana Contender Series isn't always the highest level, but he's got those 2 fights to fall back on. Did win his last fight on the Contender Series, so I'm going to take Gwen for the pick, but I hate minus 240 on him. I absolutely hate it. He'll be my pick. Strawweight bout here: Patricia Alwas against Yulia Polistri. Those are some names. Minus 375 for Polistri and plus 275 for Alwas. Alwas coming in at sits at 9-2 in her professional career, 11-3 for Polistri. Once again, we're getting a fighter who has been on the Contender Series before. Polistri was on the Contender Series back in 2021. She fought Jasmine Jazz Devicius, and she lost. That's her only loss in the past 5 years. That is for Polistri, and Patricia Alwas hasn't been on the Contender Series before, so she's a fresh meat coming in here. Women's strawweight bout, so I mean, it's not always the clearest path as far as reads go, and you're looking at regional tape for Alwas. So it's really tough to gauge these type of fights. I mean, you're looking at Alwas. Her losses are to Mabeli Lima, who's actually a pretty decent fighter, 9-2, and Maria Vega, who is 3-5-2. So I mean, you're looking. It's just not the greatest. I mean, you're looking at Alwas on tape, striker. I mean, for the most part, she wants to stand and strike. That's what I was gauging, and it's not like she has some big power or anything. It's women's strawweight. Polistri, when I was watching her on film, she's got some pretty decent striking as well. In her last fight, she got the arm triangle choke in round 1 in the LFA, and she looked pretty good in that one. I mean, Brenda Godig is 6-0, and she gave her first loss. She looked pretty good in that one. She's the rightful favorite for sure, but it's a greasy one to me. What are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, she's definitely the rightful favorite. And, on the feet, she's a pretty decent striker. I think she's a lot better when she's going forward than going backwards. I've noticed on some of these LFA fights, like girls kind of, hit her pretty easily when she's got to back up and fight off of her back foot. Like in her last fight, she was getting pieced up. And I think it was Brenda who shot a takedown, and Patricia ended up Polistri ended up reversing it and did some ground and pound and finally got the finish. But for Alwas, you look at some of her tape and she's fighting in really, really low level promotions outside of World Series of Fighting back in 2018. She had a couple of fights, but I think her striking's decent and she could have success if she's the one marching forward. But I mean, only fighting a couple times in the last 3 years. 3 to 4 years, really. I don't like that, man. I hate these fighters that come in on this show without a lot of activity. especially against a girl like Polistri, who's fought in, Jasmine, Jazz Devicius, and since that loss on the Contender Series, decision loss too, got a win over Faria by decision, and has 2 finishes off that. So I like Polistri here. I think even if she gets touched up a little bit, I do think she's got some grappling in her back pocket. I think she's going to be a pretty strong girl compared to Alujas, and if she gets the fight to the ground, she's shown that she has good control. She can find submissions and land good ground and pound. I just think she's going to be a little bit more high level than Alujas here. So I'm going to take her for the pick.
Yeah, rightful favorite. I think she's a little bit better on the feet. I think on the ground she'll be a little bit better as well. Better competition. A loss to Jazz Devicius ages pretty well. So I'll take her for the pick. And, minus 375. We're not saying anything crazy, but Dana White Contender Series dogs have been looking good. Bantamweight bout here. Casey Tanner coming in at plus 110 against Gene Matsumoto. Sit at minus 140. Both fighters undefeated, so somebody's always got to go. 31 years of age for Tanner, 24 years of age for Matsumoto, but he does have more than double the amount of fights as Tanner. Tanner, 31 years of age, and he's training out of Fight Ready with Henry Cejudo, so that's a great camp there. He's been a professional since 2018, and his last fight was in the LFA, and he got it done pretty easily, getting a TKO in the first round, only 2 minutes and 16 seconds in, but that was against a 2 and 3 fighter. So I don't know, maybe a great matchup for him there to get him a shot on the Contender Series, but that was back in February of 2022. So he's been off for a while too. I mean, a year and a half. He's never really been that active, so I'm guessing he's got some kind of job on the side. For Matsumoto, 24 years of age and been super active. I mean, look at the amount of fights he's had in the last since 2022. Started 2022, he's had 4 fights. It's pretty good. Never lost. Watching these guys on film, when I was watching Matsumoto, like, he's pretty good all around, but I would say he wants to get it to the mat. Like, watching him in the LFA, his last fight, he got kind of pieced up on the feet a little bit against Marlon Basilio. And then once he got onto the ground, he got that guillotine. For Casey Tanner, kind of a lot of the same things. Like, probably wants to get it to the ground, but he's not like a fish out of water on the feet. So it's an interesting matchup. You're kind of getting like somewhat of a vet with like the older guy with Tanner and the younger prospect, 13-0, more fights, and maybe 2 grapplers. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, like you said, for Tanner, I like that he's fighting out of Fight Ready, Henry Cejudo. Like, that's kind of his style. I mean, I like what I've seen on film so far. His level of competition probably isn't as high as Matsumoto's, but his striking is pretty good, but he's more of a wrestler. So he sets up some of the takedowns well with the strikes. And he lands the takedowns at a pretty good rate too. And he's strong when he's on top. He's an explosive guy to get it to the mat. He's got good control. Will land some good ground and pound, and he's got some submissions on his record. But Matsumoto, like, if you look at his fights where he does really, really well, it is when guys either take him down and he can get into dominant position from there, or if he takes the fight to the mat. Like, I don't think he's the worst striker in the world. Like, I think it's on the feet here, at least, it might be somewhat evenly matched, because both guys, striking is not really their first form of mixed martial arts. But Matsumoto, man, he just looks, I don't want to say young, but I think he's just kind of getting away with his explosiveness and his strength and stuff so far in these fights against lower level competition, compared to, the Contender Series or UFC level. But like you said, Casey Tanner seems more like a vet, and I really like the camp that he's training out of. I think he's going to be maybe a little bit more prepared here. Matsumoto being the younger guy, I believe he's 24?
Yeah,
24. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. You get these big undefeated prospects coming in here, and they finally fight somebody at this level or at the same level as them. Sometimes it can get interesting. And for Casey Tanner, I think the offense of wrestling is going to be better than Matsumoto. When it gets to the ground, it might be a little bit more even. But if you're a judge looking at this fight, I think Casey's probably going to be the one dictating when and where and how this fight gets to the mat. And I think it's pretty even coin flip on the feet. So I'm going to rock with Casey Tanner here, but this is going to be a pretty close fight, I think.
Yeah, this is Probably the best matchup on the card, I would say, other than
Yeah.
maybe the main event with the lightweight fight. But I don't know. I mean, Casey Tanner, he looks like a beast. Like, you look at his Instagram, he looks like shredded up. Looks pretty thick for, I mean, what are we talking here? 135. So looks like he could be like a 145, 155er, but he's 5'8". It really comes down to like experience, but Matsumoto has more professional experience. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, in this spot, I like that Tanner trains at Fight Ready. And it looks like he has some good skills, but I don't know if he's going to be able to put Matsumoto in spots where Matsumoto has to like make some changes because he has more experience than Casey Tanner. So I'm going to go with Matsumoto, younger guy. Always got to like that too. But yeah, it's a close fight. I think it could go either way. Probably better off just taking the dog and hoping for the best. But those are the picks for a Dana White Contender Series episode 6. We got, 5 more? So this one and then 4 more after it. So hopefully y'all have been crushing it on the Dana White Contender Series. And always great to have fights on Tuesday. You got anything else for the people before we head out?
No, just last week Contender Series, I was up a slight bit. Take it easy on the betting because you just don't know what you're going to get at the end of the day with some of these fights. They can be some of the most unpredictable fights you can possibly pick. So
yeah,
just take it easy. Pick some dogs. I'm telling you.
Yeah, if you don't take it easy after Bruno Lopez getting knocked out last week, then you are just one degenerate, and we can't help you then. But yep, hit the sub to support the channel at the Double Egg on Instagram to get the bets when they're available. Stay tuned for that. They'll be posted there at HeyJud Picks on the medias. For me, where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
All right, till the next video, the Double Egg. Signing out.